This is a wonderful turnout. Let me thank you all very much for coming out on this beautiful Vermont evening. Oh, we're in Iowa, okay. And let me thank Deb, not only for her wonderful introduction, but for reminding us how many of our best young men and women have put their lives on the line to defend us, and how many of them have come home wounded in body or sometimes in soul. So let me just simply begin in thanking Deb and her son, and saying that people disagree about wars. I voted against the war in Iraq, but I think we all understand that we will never, ever hold the warriors responsible for the war. And that our job is to make sure, if America means anything, it means that we provide the best health care and the benefits that our veterans have earned. And as the former chair of the Senate Veterans Committee, that's what I've tried to do, and as president, that is what I certainly will do. Before I get into the thrust of my remarks, and then we'll open it up to some questions and comments, I want to remind everybody that we have an election coming up pretty soon. Probably you know that. And funny things happen a few weeks, or in this case 9 or 10 days before an election. People start saying things that are not necessarily accurate. I know this shocks all of you. It has happened once or twice. And one of the arguments being made by my opponent is that, well, Bernie is a nice guy, but he just can't win. He can't defeat Republicans. Well, let me disabuse you of that thought. It ain't true. We can defeat Republicans, and we will defeat the Republican candidate. Why do I say that? I say that for two basic reasons. Number one, and I understand that polls are polls, and polls go up and polls go down. But in a recent NBC national poll, the last poll that's been out, Hillary Clinton did well, and she was ahead of Donald Trump by 10 points. That's good. We were ahead by 15 points. In the poll before that, she did well. She was ahead by 7 points. We were ahead by 13 points. Now, they have done a lot of polling, needless to say, in Iowa and New Hampshire. And what's interesting about those states is people get to know the candidates. Whether you like it or not, you see a lot of us, right? And in Iowa, she was ahead of Mr. Trump by 8 points. We were winning by 13 points. She was losing to my good friend Ted Cruz by 4 points. We were defeating him by 5 points. And in New Hampshire, actually, the numbers are even wider than that, much wider than that. The one I like the best is that she was defeating Mr. Trump in New Hampshire by 1 point. We were defeating him by 19 points. I mentioned that not to get hung up on polls, but to say that anyone who goes around the state, and that's one of the arguments. Now, there are people who are strongly supporting Hillary Clinton, and they have absolute right to do that. And people who are supporting us. But what bothers me is somebody who says, well, I like Bernie, I really want to vote for Bernie, but he can't win. And that's just not accurate. I think we can win, and in fact, I think we will be the stronger candidate in the general election against the Republicans. I'll give you another reason. It's not just polls. Here is the simple political truth of our time. Republicans win when people are demoralized and do not come out and vote. All right? That's a fact. In the last election in November of 2014, Republicans won a huge victory. The control over the Senate, gained more seats in the House, won governor's chairs, etc. In that election, 63% of the American people didn't vote. 80% of young people didn't vote. So the truth is, people do not vote for Republicans by and large because of their brilliant ideas. Truth is, must say, Republicans do not have very many brilliant ideas. Now, I know that in Iowa you see a whole lot of TV ads, correct? But you have never seen a Republican candidate do an ad which really tells the truth about where most of Republicans stand. There are nuances of difference. You haven't seen that 30-second ad which says, vote for candidate X. He wants to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut your Social Security, your Medicare, and your Medicaid, and he appreciates your support. You don't see that ad. But that is really the truth. That is precisely what they want to do. And the way you defeat that is to rally the American people, to bring non-traditional voters into the process, in fact, to revitalize American democracy. We call this campaign a campaign not just to elect Bernie Sanders. And what I have said over and over and over again is, of course, I want to win. And I want to win here in Iowa, and I want to win nationally. But no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it, can bring about the changes that we need in this country unless there is a political revolution, unless millions of people become involved in the political process in a way that we have not seen for a very, very long time. I think that anybody who objectively looks at our campaign, at Secretary Clinton's campaign, she's running a good campaign, but anyone who looks at the two campaigns will come to the conclusion that our campaign has the energy, has the excitement, is bringing young people, is bringing working people into it. And we can do this on a national scale. And if we do that, and if large numbers of people come in and stand up and say loudly and clearly that at this moment in American history, our government has got to start working for the middle class and working families and not just a handful of billionaires. When that happens, we're going to win, and we're going to win big. Now, when campaigns get into trouble, they start throwing out a lot of stuff. And I think it's fair to say that when we began this campaign, way back, we were 50 points behind. Guess what? We are not 50 points behind right now. And that's the truth. And Secretary Clinton's campaign understands that, and they're seeing them throwing out a whole lot of stuff. I don't have the experience, or my ideas are pie in the sky. I want you all in Iowa to think back 8 years ago. Did you hear that same argument against Barack Obama? People of Iowa didn't accept it then. I don't think they're going to accept these arguments now. Now here's some very interesting news. I just read this last night and I wanted to share it with you. What we are trying to do in this campaign is to create a political revolution, and that means to take on the powerful special economic interests, the political establishment, the corporate media. That's not easy stuff to do. But I got very heartened last night when I read this. This is a story that appeared in the Wall Street Journal. It's online in the Wall Street Journal. And this is what it said. It said that a gentleman named Stephen Schwartzman, who is the CEO of the Blackstone Investor Bank. It's a very large investor bank and very big deal on Wall Street and financial affairs. He said, and this is what he said, and I quote, he said that markets are unsettled because of geopolitical risks, the slowdown in China, and because Bernie Sanders has become a viable candidate. So we are doing something right. We're getting Wall Street nervous. That's a pretty good thing. And the other thing that I found interesting is Bill Clinton. I've known Bill Clinton, for a very long time. I was in the House when he was in Congress, and we're friends. And President Clinton is going around the country, obviously, in support of Hillary. And he was somewhere, I think maybe in Nevada, and he said, Bernie Sanders is angry. I plead guilty. I am angry. I am angry, and millions of Americans are angry. We are angry that our people are working longer hours for low wages, and almost all new wealth and income is going to the top 1%. We are angry that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, at the same time as we've seen a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires. We are angry that millions of our kids are leaving college deeply in debt. And we're angry that unemployment rates for kids who graduate high school are off the charts. We are angry that our criminal justice system is broken. And we're angry that we have a corrupt campaign finance system that allows billionaires to buy elections. We are angry, and we should be angry. Now, the difference between our anger and the anger of Donald Trump's supporters is that we are trying to understand the real causes of our problems. Why is the middle class disappearing? Why do we have 47 million people living in poverty? Why do we have so much income and wealth inequality? Why are we the only major country on earth that doesn't have health care for all people? And we're finding real answers. And in many ways, that has a lot to do with the greed of Wall Street, the greed of corporate America, which is doing so much to damage working families in this country. But what we don't do is scapegoat minorities. What we don't do is support dividing up our country. What we understand, and what this campaign is about, is that bringing people together, men, women, people born in America, people born abroad, gay people, straight people, whoever, black people, white people, Latino people, Native American people, we understand that when we stand together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. And that is basically what this campaign is about. And when we talk about why people are angry in this country, one of the issues I think that really strikes at the core of so many Americans is the level of income and wealth inequality that we're experiencing in this country. Very few people I know, whether they're progressives, whether they're conservatives, whether they're moderates, Democrats, Republicans, whatever, think that it is acceptable that in America, the top 1/10 of 1%, you got that? Not 1%, 1/10 of 1% own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Who thinks that that's what America should be about? Who thinks that what America should be about are 20 people at the top owning more wealth than the bottom half of our people, 150 million Americans? Who thinks that it is acceptable or appropriate or moral that one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people? One family. We hear a whole lot in this country about welfare abuse, people taking advantage of the welfare system. The major welfare recipient in America, it turns out, is the wealthiest family in this country, the Walton family. And the reason that they are the major welfare recipient is that you, as taxpayers, are paying to provide Medicaid and food stamps and affordable housing to the employees of the Walton family, because they are not paying the wages and benefits that enable their workers to have a minimal standard of living. I say to the Walton family, the wealthiest family in this country, get off of welfare, start paying your workers decent wages and decent benefits. The middle class and working families of this country should not have to subsidize the wealthiest family in America. And when we talk about inequality, it's not just the grotesque level of wealth inequality, it is income. Right now in my state, and I know it's true here in Iowa, you got people who are working not one job, they're working 2 jobs, maybe occasionally 3 jobs, to cobble together enough income and health care to take care of their family. Is that right? That's what you see. In fact, I was in Des Moines a number of months ago. It was really interesting. And I was at the, I was down in Des Moines, and I was talking to a guy who works at an emergency food shelf. And what he said is that 90% of the people who go to the emergency food shelf are working people, but they're not earning enough money to adequately take care of their families. So what we have all over this country are people working longer and longer hours. You know and I know that families are stressed out. Mom is working full-time, dad is working full-time, marriages are suffering because of that stress, parents are not spending enough time with their children, kids are hurt because of that. And yet, despite the fact that we now work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world, 58% of all new income created today is going to the top 1%. You got that? We're working longer and longer hours. Husbands working, wives working, kids working. 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. So are you ready for a radical idea?
Yes.
All right. Why not? It's a cold night out there. Let's do a radical idea. How about creating an economy that works for the middle class and not just the billionaire class? And when we talk about the economy, what we should talk about also is jobs. Jobs and unemployment. Every month the government publishes a figure on unemployment. And the official unemployment is 5%. How many people here think real unemployment in America is 5%? Okay, not too many of you. Why not? What's the difference between official unemployment and real unemployment? Anyone know? Good. So, real unemployment includes those people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. Also includes those people in high unemployment areas who have given up looking for work. Add all of that together, real unemployment is 9.9%. But then on top of that, there is something even worse. A number of months ago, I asked some economists to do a study for me on youth unemployment, for kids who graduated high school between 17 and 20. Okay? And what the economists told us is that for white kids, youth unemployment was 33%. For Latino kids, 36%. For African American kids, 51%. Now think about it. Put yourself into the head of a kid, graduates high school, 18 years of age, wants to stand up on his or her own 2 feet, wants to get out of the house, wants to become independent, wants to become an adult, wants to earn some money. But for many of those kids, there is not that opportunity to go out and get a job. Jobs are not there. Now, if anybody in this room thinks there is not a direct correlation between very high youth unemployment and another national tragedy, and that is that we have more people in jail than do the people of any other country. We have 2.2 million people in jail, more people in jail than China or any other country on worker. So here is radical idea number 2. Are you all ready for this one?
Yeah.
What about investing in education and jobs for our kids rather than jails and incarceration? I will, as president, here's a promise, do my very best to end the disgrace of us having more people in jail than any other country. Instead of having more people in jail, we should be focusing on how we create the best educated population in the world. Now, why are people working such long hours? Why are people working 50 or 60 hours? And here's something that's interesting. Some of you may remember when we were kids, we saw history books. And the history book showed workers 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, marching down streets and demonstrating. And they held these large placards. What were they saying on those placards? Anyone remember? What did they demand? What was their demand? 40-hour week. That was over 100 years ago. We're still fighting for the 40-hour week. All right? And what they were saying then is, we are not beasts of burden. We're human beings. We want time for our families. We want time for education. And yet the vast majority of American workers today, men and women, are working longer than 40 hours a week. And the reason for that is not hard to understand. Wages in this country are just too low. And you could do the arithmetic as well as I can. The federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. And you can multiply 7 1/4, you can multiply 8, 9, $10 an hour, 40, 50 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, and you end up with a sum of money that people cannot live on. That's just a fact. And that is why we have got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. It is not a radical socialistic idea to say that if somebody works 40 hours a week, that person should not live in poverty. That is an American idea. That is an idea of fairness. In my view, we've got to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour over the next few years. Now, for better or for worse, those of you here in Iowa, you see a lot of politicians dropping through your state. And you see a lot of Republicans who talk about family values. You ever hear them talking about family values? They love families. Can't stop thinking about families. But you all know what they mean when they talk about family values. What they are saying is that no woman in this room, in this state, in this country, should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. What they are saying is that Planned Parenthood should stop getting federal funding. They want to cut it completely. I want to increase funding for Planned Parenthood. And what Republicans are also saying when they talk about family values is that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to marry. I disagree. Now, Jane, where did Jane go?
Right here.
There she is.
Hi.
All right. Jane and I have been married for 27 years.